Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, I'd like to talk about why I think it's extremely likely at this point that Bernie Sanders is going to be running for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination. A couple of articles that have come out over the past month that I'd like to touch on, but then also diving into the letter that Bernie Sanders sent out to his supporters today that's very indicative of somebody that's looking like they're going to be announcing at some point here, perhaps in the near future or at the very least in the upcoming year, that they're going to be running for that presidential nomination in the Democratic Party. So starting off here, about a month ago, the Sanders Institute brought together about 250 progressive leaders from around the country. And a lot of these were people that supported his 2016 candidacy. I feel like at this three-day conference, it's highly likely that these progressive leaders were formulating a strategy and a platform that they think would be their best case to go on and win that 2020 nomination in the Democratic primary. And of all the leaders that were at this particular conference, you would definitely say that Bernie Sanders would have the best chance at winning the nomination, just given his polling numbers, his approval ratings, in terms of his head-to-head matchups against other potential primary opponents. He's also a progressive that is a bit above the rest of the pack. And just the fact that Bernie Sanders started at the ground level in 2016 and has garnered so much support that he's been able to build over the past couple of years, it would mean that he'd be able to hit the ground running a bit quicker going into 2020, and his chances would be a bit better as well in that scenario. Now, a couple of weeks after this article came out, we got another article, this one from the New York Times, talking about a meeting between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and about their 2020 prospects of running for that nomination. Now, it seems like both of these senators are probably likely to run, but they would split off a lot of each other's votes. So if you could consolidate support behind one candidate, you would be much more likely to go on and win that possible nomination. Now, of these two possible candidates, you would give the lean over to Bernie Sanders just in terms of his overall approval numbers and favorability are better than Elizabeth Warren. He has better name recognition. He has a bigger grassroots network of support behind his candidacy, especially in terms of fundraising, which Bernie Sanders absolutely shattered records in terms of those small dollar donations, what he was able to do in 2016. And this is going to be a continued ongoing conversation between what are the two most progressive senators right now. And again, if they both decide to run, it would hurt both of their chances. So I think that it would be in the best case scenario of the progressives to consolidate behind one candidacy, and that would seemingly be Bernie Sanders. And it's just a continued conversation that I think he needs to have with Elizabeth Warren and talking about their possibilities at going on and winning that Democratic nomination. But then beyond that, a letter just came out today from Bernie Sanders to his supporters, and it's basically going right after the Wall Street centrist Democrats. They're already starting to run ads against Bernie Sanders in the opening primary states, and he already feels like he has to raise awareness about this and kind of mount his counterattack, even though he hasn't announced running up to this point. I feel like he wants to wait at least a bit more time until things have settled a bit more, maybe more people deciding that they wanted to run. But you don't want to announce too early, because then perhaps some of the early momentum you might garner could fade away. So I completely understand why Sanders hasn't decided to announce yet. None of the other heavy hitters have decided to announce running either. But the supporters that are going to be behind these Wall Street type centrist Democrats, that big money interest is already funneling in to try to defeat the progressives for that 2020 nomination. So starting off here, when I'm asked, of course, this being Bernie Sanders, about running for president in 2020, I answer that if I'm the best candidate to beat Donald Trump, then I will probably run. Now, in Bernie Sanders' mind, that's obviously going to be a progressive candidate that would have the best chance to defeat Donald Trump, as the centrist Democrats came up short against Donald Trump in 2016. And of the progressives right now, at least in the polling, Bernie Sanders is head and shoulders above the rest of the field. So you got to think that he feels like he's going to be the best opportunity for the Democrats to defeat Donald Trump in 2020 after they had tried the centrist corporate route type of Democrat in 2016. And then beyond that, just like I talked about, so right now a group of Wall Street Democrats, he's calling them out here just in a big way to his supporters. They're known as the Third Way. They're running ads in early primary states like Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada. And they're calling out Bernie Sanders by name, saying that his ideas like Medicare for all are a path to defeat in 2020. So they're already trying to spread this idea of an uncertainty and doubt behind a progressive candidate running against Trump, even though, like I said in 2016, running the more moderate type of Democrat was not a recipe for success. At least that's how things played out, even though it was a very competitive election. Now, this is a fundraising email, obviously needing those funds to combat the Wall Street Democrats. I just highlighted a couple of other areas here that I want to touch on. So theirs is the agenda that made Donald Trump possible, referencing the Wall Street Democrats. Ours is the agenda that will defeat him. Another reference just indicating that Bernie Sanders obviously thinks it's highly likely that if you want to defeat Donald Trump, you need to run a progressive, and he's likely to be that candidate to go on and do that. And then it also says, in 2016, we face the kitchen sink. If we run again, you should expect no less, but the political revolution is stronger and larger than ever, and they will be no match for us if we're in this fight together. So again, riddled throughout this email to his supporters, it just seems very likely that Bernie Sanders is going to be running for that 2020 Democratic presidential nomination, or at least that's how I see it. And I would be shocked if he decided not to run at this point. But again, he could very well throw his support behind some other progressive that he might think has a better shot to win than him. But at least based on what we're seeing right now in terms of the polling data, you would definitely say amongst the Democrats that would run for this nomination, Bernie Sanders would be the progressive with the best chance at winning that nomination in the Democratic primary and then moving on and perhaps beating Donald Trump and the Republicans. So that's all I wanted to talk about in this video, guys. If you want more content, you can click that subscribe button, and I hope to see you back here for future videos.